Releasing in version 1.5 are two very curious characters, Huohuo and Argenti. The two of these could not be further apart from each other in personality, that's for sure. Now that we have an established lineup of general DPS characters, I think for the next two versions, MiHoYo will play around with some more niche areas, as evident by Topaz coming out just before, and of course the two we have for 1.5. First off is Huohuo, the most adorable character in Star Rail since Bailu, and what I can only describe as a hybrid between Sucrose and Chi-Chi in regards to her appearance. She's the first abundance unit to come out since Luocha, who has quickly become one of the most widely used characters on account of not only synergizing with like 90% of the game's best units at the moment, but also, being the only accessible healer. Several months later, we finally have another one, so as per usual, I'll be analyzing Huohuo's abilities and design as well as talk about how she impacts the current meta, assuming there's any impact at all. But given that she's a support character, and having mentioned several times that support units are almost always more influential than damage dealers, I think she'll make a good impression, so let's get started. Huohuo does a few things differently than other healers, but more or less fits the same general ballpark. So if you came to this video solely for whether or not it's worth pulling for her, at the moment it's a hard yes, purely because if you don't have both Luocha and Bailu, it would be a prudent choice to go for a second healer just to have your bases covered. Though at this point, Memory of Chaos is becoming easier for players to clear since we have enough characters to flesh out 2 parties of 4, and in Storm Disaster you only really need 4. I'm of the school of thought that it's better to have something and not need it than to need it and not have it. So if you're all set in regards to damage dealers, then you should dedicate your budget towards support characters. This is also a good opportunity for those of you who passed on Luocha to finally get a half-decent healer, no offense to Natasha. Huohuo's basic attack shares the same property as Fu Xuan, where instead of scaling off attack, it scales off her HP, so she can contribute a decent amount of damage whenever she basic attacks. As for her skill, it's basically Bailu and Luocha's skills put together, where she cleanses the main target and heals them for a big chunk of health, while at the same time regenerating a lesser yet still considerable amount to adjacent allies. In other words, Huohuo is a blast dealer. This makes it better than Luocha's skill in that it can recover multiple targets in one cast, while making it more consistent than Bailu's skill, whose bounces are completely random. So already it's a very solid skill to have. Obviously, Luocha derives its healing strength from the insurance policy that comes with an ally falling to low HP, so Huohuo's is more of a side grade than an upgrade. It's good that she has a cleanse though, that's one thing Bailu doesn't have. For her ultimate, at a ridiculous yet somewhat understandable cost of 140 energy, she grants a fairly substantial attack buff to the other 3 party members while also charging their ultimates. You can see why it has an exorbitant cost of 140. One of the biggest reasons Tingyun is so good is that she can super buff one person to deal a ton of damage and have their ultimate back up sooner. Huohuo can do this to all 3 party members, boosting the damage of your main carry and the uptime of your other supports who are likely boosting the damage of your main carry as well. Huohuo is to my knowledge the first Harmony Abundance hybrid, as she can both restore health and buff her team at the same time. Technically Luocha can also do the same, but that's assuming you have his first Eidolon. He and Bailu are for the most part just strictly healers, while Huohuo has something else she can do. The good news is that she doesn't fall too far behind her peers in sustain, and that's all thanks to her passive talent. Whenever using her skill, she gets a buff that recovers a small chunk of her teammates' health at the start of their turn or whenever they cast their ultimate, along with restoring that same amount to all teammates below half HP. More importantly, this heal is accompanied by a cleanse, making Huohuo far more consistent at dealing with crowd control and debuffs than Luocha, since Luocha can only proc his insurance policy every so often, and he can only do it if he himself is not disabled, whereas Huohuo can passively use this up to 6 times per cast. It's basically up forever. 2 of her passive traits build off her talent. The first, letting her automatically start every fight with her talent buff active already, and the second, regenerating 1 energy with each proc of her talent. 1 energy might sound like nothing, but if you think about it, Ethereal Metaflow will be activating a billion times a fight, so that can definitely add up. And with how valuable her ultimate is, that's definitely something you want to spam as often as possible, especially when taking into account its short duration. The key aspect of Huohuo's power is that while she may cost more SP than the other healers, she offers more utility, which can make her better if optimizing the full strength of your damage dealers. Healing right now is kind of overkill across the board anyway, regardless of which abundance unit you use. Most of the time, if your party members die, it's because they get one-shotted, not because they don't get enough healing. So the idea is to see what else the healers offer. For Bailu, she offers built-in death immunity, which Luocha doesn't have and Huohuo can only have with E2. For Luocha, he can restore your party without ever having to use SP. For Huohuo, she has better crowd control cleansing and can battery and boost her team's attack strength. Her utility extends to her technique as well, where upon cast, she inflicts a fear on nearby enemies, and when entering battle against them, they lose 25% of their attack for 2 turns. Not the most game-changing technique out there, but in long-term survival situations like Storm Disaster, it's not half bad of a pre-battle start. That's the gist of Huohuo's kit. Instead of going fully into healing, she focuses more on equal parts recovery and support. Her ultimate has the potential to be incredibly useful though. At rank 10, it gives a 40% attack buff and regenerates 20% of her entire party's ultimates. This can simultaneously increase your party's offensive and defensive capability. Defensively, if you were to field her with Japar, that makes it super easy for him to maintain his shield, which at that point renders your entire team essentially invulnerable to any damage. Offensively, Huohuo opens up the door for more efficient double carry team comps. Prior to her, it typically wasn't recommended to go double DPS teams as most supports could only buff one of them, not both. Bronya's ultimate may affect her entire party, but a turn refresh only helps one person. Same with Tingyun, she's almost exclusively single target. Recently we just got Fu Xuan, who offers bonus crit rate to the entire party, and with E1 she also gives bonus crit damage. Huohuo offers bonus attack, a significant amount at that. So with her in the game, you now have a worthwhile incentive to go for 2 carries if you want to. At present, one of my favorite teams is Jingliu and Blade, since the two are both SP efficient and they can increase each other's DPS. The downside is that I felt like I could only capitalize on the max damage of one of them at a time, so that's the main reason I want to go after Huohuo. Other dual carries can include stuff like Topaz and Jingyuan, since even though Topaz is buffing Jingyuan, she herself also does a ton of damage. And with Numbi and Lightning Lord scaling off their respective users' attack stat, that 40% attack buff from Huohuo will be put to very good use. Plus, both Topaz and Jingyuan want to get off their ultimate as often as possible for max uptime on their summons, making this an excellent team for Huohuo to boost up. One other team that she can greatly improve is Kafka. Damage over time doesn't scale off crit rate and by extension crit damage whatsoever, meaning you want to make use of attack buffs. The bonus attack from Huohuo's ultimate can increase the dot strength of Kafka, Sampo, Luca, etc., which then gets compounded again by Kafka's reactivation from her skill and ultimates, and with more ultimates comes even more activations of their dot damage. I should probably mention that you don't have to go double carry or full team if you don't want to. Free energy and bonus attack works for single carries as well. Seela would love to have more uses of her ultimate. More uses of Super Dan Heng's ultimate means less skill points you have to spend on his empowered basic attack, so Huohuo is honestly good on every top meta team at the moment. I dare say she might even be better than Luocha, specifically because she can offer more than just healing, while still healing enough to make ends meet. The fact that her ultimate recovers energy instantly makes her an all-purpose buffer. If it were just attack, that would disqualify her from supporting HP scalers like Blade, and if it was something like crit damage or crit rate, it would prevent her from synergizing with Kafka. Energy, however, applies to virtually the entire existing roster because everyone's ultimates play an integral role in their gameplay. On the subject of being potentially better than Luocha, if you go after her Eidolons, then she most certainly is. Luocha's E1 gives 20% bonus attack to all party members while its Abyss Field is active, which is a solid buff, but nothing worth writing home about. Huohuo, on the other hand, is much more interesting. First, the duration of her talent buff extends by 1 turn, which is always appreciated. But second, rather than 20% bonus attack, Huohuo gives 12% bonus speed. Speed is another universally appreciated stat for almost every character since it's also a global enhancement. With more speed, your units get more turns. More turns equals more SP regeneration through basic attacks from units that don't need to use their skill every turn. More turns equals more energy charge for your ultimates, which means more shields, more buffs, heals, what have you, and of course, more turns equals more DPS. Speed is extremely valuable in light of Star Rail being turn-based. Just being able to act one extra turn makes a huge difference. Huohuo's E1 gives your entire party a permanent 12% bonus speed. She honestly does everything. More damage, more speed, more ultimates, passive healing, active healing, and cleanses. And if you decide to go E2 on her, she has Bailu's passive, where she can prevent one of her party members from taking fatal damage up to twice per battle. That patches up her only real weakness, being that she sucks against burst damage. With E2, Huohuo is far and away the best healer in the game. The second Eidolon of the first two only lets them do their job better, whereas Huohuo's second Eidolon gives her an entirely new property. The funny thing is that Huohuo's E2 is Bailu's E6 and passive talent put together. Bailu's E6 lets her cheat death once more for a total of 2 times per battle, but Huohuo gets 2 procs of this with just her second Eidolon. Her 6th Eidolon gives Tingyun's ultimate damage boost whenever she heals an ally. Given that her passive talent procs constantly, she basically gives her entire team 50% unconditional bonus damage, which at that point makes her egregiously overpowered. But once again, I don't think anyone should E6 a character unless they have more money than God himself. Overall, Huohuo is excellent. Not only is she an abundance unit, which many players are sorely in need of, but she's a buffer with a ton of room for upside. And just like the other healers, she's pretty SP efficient, only having to use a skill to refresh her talent, which takes care of the rest. Even though I have Luocha and Bailu, I'm definitely gonna pull for her. I think I might go for her E1 too. That 12% speed makes a huge difference. For those of you on a tight budget, or if you're free to play, if you already have Luocha, you can probably skip Huohuo for now. Luocha is still more than capable of handling all of your medical needs for months, if not years to come. I know I spent the past 5 minutes or so gushing about all the stuff Huohuo brings that Luocha and Bailu don't have, but don't misunderstand. Luocha is still very, very good. Huohuo is more of a min-max pull in my opinion. For those who can whale, she's definitely a must pull. For those who are rationing Stellar Jades, probably skip. Although I said that last time for Luocha, which was a huge mistake, so maybe we should just err on the side of caution and pull for her? I don't know. I personally am, cause she's adorable. What is with Star Rail and making small characters insanely broken? Anyways, enough of the rambling, that concludes my assessment of Huohuo. Let me know in the comments down below if you plan to pull for her or not, but aside from that, if you enjoyed the video, I encourage you to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at Vars, join my Discord server, and check out my other Star Rail character discussions if you haven't yet. But till next time, thanks so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Take care.